What's up, everybody, and welcome to another sit down video. I'm starting a new segment here on the show each week, and I've talked about it. I've kind of teased it a little bit. This is Gotti's Guy featuring Lewis Kasman. And we interviewed Lewis about a month and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer. We've done some videos with him. I think people enjoyed his content, and it got me thinking, what about a weekly show? Kind of a talk show. We're not going to say that we're going to sit here from the moment Lewis was born and talk about his life, but it's important to understand kind of where he comes from. We want to hear stories, and it's just going to be a weekly show, something every Thursday at noon that's going to drop, and we're going to talk about something different. And today, I want to talk to Lewis a little bit about kind of where the show will go. And we're going to delve in a little bit to the Mayweather Gotti fight, which is coming up this week. I want to kind of talk about the past a little bit with Lewis. Was John Gotti Sr. a big fan of boxing? Maybe kind of talk a little bit about that. What would he think of his grandson fighting at this level and more? Let's bring him in now. Lewis, what's happening? How you doing?
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. You're
Good, good,
looking
good.
clear. We don't have that. We don't have that new big mansion home in the background that we had last time. But people enjoyed the Q&A we did. They enjoyed the interview you did. Um, one thing I've tried to pride myself on with my channel is I try to find people that no one's ever spoken to before. And you and I, like a lot of the guys I've spoken to, it was kind of a random meeting, right? You just kind of popped up in my comments. We kind of got to talking, and you kind of told me, you had thought about doing an interview with somebody, but then I kind of got thinking, there's a lot to your story. Obviously, you had a unique relationship with John Gotti, and I felt like expanding on that was important. So excited each week to kind of talk about this. And I'm not saying this is the only thing we'll do. We have some other plans, some ideas for you. But I guess what do you kind of want to achieve here? I think you have so many stories, and people need to hear from them, right?
That's right. I want to, a lot of areas I want to set the record straight. You have a lot of people in this genre that really don't really know much about John. They make it up as they go along, and on other matters, that I was privy to over my relationship with John. So yeah, it's about setting the record straight, clearing up lies and mistruths, and letting people know who and
Yeah,
what John was all about, and other associates of his, friends of his.
I think that's interesting because, like, I heard someone say recently to me, like, do we really need more Gotti content? And I said, I'm thinking to myself, I guess you're right in a way, but I also think that what do we really know about John Gotti? Like, we've seen him in his suits, and we know the gangster John Gotti, right? We know this John Gotti, the one we saw on television. But I really thought to myself, I was talking with a colleague, RJ, about this, and he said to me, what did we really hear John Gotti talk other than like, hey, how you doing it to like a reporter? We don't know like what he thought about this and what he thought about that. We heard the wiretaps, but you knew John more on like, I don't want to say intimate level, but you did know him to the level of, you had no blood relation to John, but he treated you like a son. You knew him since you were a teenager, essentially. And we know
Right.
that his family is on YouTube, and we know that we'll talk today about his son. We know that they're his family, but there were people like yourself that had a really intimate, unique look into him and knew him well, better than very few people. So I want to kind of do that with this show. And again, this is not a show to, I've always tried to maintain, look, there's drama that'll ensue. I get it. But we're not here to upset anybody. We're just here to, as you said, you're here to kind of maybe set the record straight, at least on your part of your life.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So what do you think of that logo, that little thumbnail? It's pretty cool, right? I mean,
Yeah, I like it. Yeah,
not bad.
excellent. Yeah.
And as you told me, you have to get to your storage unit. You have stuff that no one's seen before. You have, what do you have, Lewis? Letters. You have all sorts of stuff.
I have hundreds, maybe thousands of documents over the years. Letters he wrote to me, letters he wrote to my children, correspondence from all the lawyers, just an accumulation of of years and years and years of all of this information and paperwork.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, and I will say, as someone who I take pride in bringing on folks that have a distinct part in the mafia's history. You are one of those individuals, regardless of whether you're a made man or not.
Yeah.
I know for a fact a lot of the things that we're going to show here, I've seen with my own eyes. So I think that's important to kind of put my stamp on it, whether that means anything. But Lewis, I wanted to talk about something kind of going on right now. This Saturday, John Gotti III will fight legendary boxer, undefeated champion Floyd Mayweather. This is an exhibition, and I actually want to invite anybody watching this. I contacted a friend of mine at Bet Online, one of the best offshore sports books in the business, and I said to him, Dave, we need a line on this fight. Can you put it out? You can actually bet on this fight at Bet Online. And again, Bet Online doesn't pay me. I have a good relationship with those guys over my years of sports betting. John Gotti is a huge underdog in this fight. Floyd Mayweather is minus 3,000. That means for every 3,000 you bet, you win $100. So it's a large risk. But again, Floyd Mayweather is undefeated. And I kind of wanted to ask you, I wanted to kind of go back in time a little bit. We've heard you tell stories. This is a photo of you and Jackie Nose and John Jr. You mentioned to me this was, I believe, on that one of the Godfather and Son shows. You said to me you believe this was an MSG, maybe a De La Hoya fight, possibly.
Correct.
I guess I'll ask before I ask you about all this and the legacy of this. Do you remember John Gotti Sr.? Did he like boxing? Was that something
he did like boxing? He did go to the Garden on several occasions to watch a fight. He did like most wise guys like boxing, but yeah, he did like boxing.
And we know that he was a big sports bettor. He bet on a lot of games, that sort of
Absolutely.
thing. But I'd have to think, like, back in the day, let's say the 90s or late 80s, boxing fights were they still are. I mean, a lot of celebrities and important people go to them. And we've seen, obviously, as you know, the criminal element to boxing. I'm curious, like, with John the Senior, what would he think of his grandson doing this? He would be proud, I would think, right? Do you think that this is something that he would have did? Like, let's say John was still alive. Would this something you think he would have done it regardless?
No. If John was alive, I mean, he could have went on to do the MMA stuff. He could have went on to, on that level, but I don't think John would have permitted him to go into the ring and do anything like that. But, that being said, John III, from what I see and what I read, he's a very talented fighter. And in my opinion, this is all about the money. He's not going to beat Mayweather. Mayweather's not going to let him beat him. He doesn't want to beat him. He wants the payday because, according to his father, I'm out of the life.
Right.
So I guess he needs income.
Well, listen, I mean, here's the thing. Lewis, as you know, at the end of the day, most of what individuals do is over money. And I think here's what I'll say. Floyd Mayweather is the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme, the best of the best. Do I think this individual would have got the fight if his last name wasn't Gotti? Of course not, right? Floyd's in the business of selling tickets now, having a good time, making a bunch of money. And the name Gotti is synonymous with crime. It's still a name that invokes thought. Most Americans, if I go down to my center of my town and I say, do you know who John Gotti is? Most people know who he is. He's a huge name. Yep. And we've seen the kids over the years benefit off it. I benefit off the name Gotti. I'm not afraid to tell anyone that. You will benefit off the name Gotti. John Sr. has an incredible legacy in terms of that. And I can't fault the kid for doing it. That said,
no, I mean, he's an excellent athlete. You could see that. You read what people say about him. He's an outstanding athlete. I just hope that his dad, gives him his fair share of the purse, and he doesn't need to do this anymore, because based on what you read and what the purse is, he could retire, raise his family, get married, have a wonderful life, and not step into the ring again.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
let's
he's going
just
to make a
hope,
lot of money
based on his, based on John Jr.'s past track record, when it comes to money, money is his god.
for sure. And here's one thing I will say: if we see a good showing from the kid here, right? Let's say if he, maybe bothers Floyd a little bit better than he did the first time. The first fight was marred by the brawl after, it was messy, and we're going to talk about some comments by John Jr. about that and what we can expect from this one. But let's say the kid does a good job here. First of all, he's going to make a lot of money. We know how this boxing fight stuff works.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll just say this. I fought on pay-per-view. It was for a gag. It was from the company I worked at, Barstool Sports at the time. I made a lot of money, and I'm just a regular guy, right? I'm talking about a good amount. So he's going to make millions for this, right? But if he has a good showing, it wouldn't surprise me if we see him, maybe fight one of these, TikTokers, the Jake Paul kind of people, the guys like that. That's more money. This is a smart business idea. That said, and here's why I disagree with you on the one level of, you say that it's about John Jr. and the money. I don't disagree. But I do feel he was genuine in one of the press conferences where he said to the kid, the kid wanted to go box, and he said, "Okay, here's a couple of dollars. Go get a membership." And a few months later, the kid says, because he talked about this at the press conference, "I want you to come to my fight, Dad." And he said, "What do you mean fight?" And the kid was like all about it. I think the kid seems like a smart kid, seems like an all right kid. I think he gets the fight game. Do I think in this fight he will have success? No, but I think he will do better. The problem he has here, Junior, his ability to negotiate worked. Like, they got to fight twice. Doing it in Mexico is a bad decision.
Very bad.
And I'll tell you why.
Decision.
Mexico City is, I believe, 6,000 or 7,000 feet above sea level. That is an incredibly hard thing to do. Regardless of, look, the kid's in unbelievable shape, and he can go down there and hang out for a week or two. But Floyd Mayweather's fought hundreds of fights over the years against some of the greatest fighters we've ever seen. De La Hoya, all these different, Arturo Gotti, all these people. Floyd going from Vegas to Mexico, this is going to be a walk in the park for him. He just has experience, right?
Correct.
I'm curious to see how Gotti will deal with that, because I think in the first 3 or 4 rounds, it's not going to be a big deal. When we get into the 6th, 7th, 8th round, this kid could be huffing and puffing. And
if it goes that far,
absolutely. And
but
as you said,
Jeff, what you have to realize is that whatever the outcome of this fight is, his level of endorsements and different things he could get involved with after the fight is really what John Jr. should really be focusing on.
Absolutely.
Why would you want to put your son back into the ring again? It's of no value. Let's assume half of what we read is true on what the purse is. 20 million, 10 million, whatever it is. Why would you want to put your son back in the ring? Now go out, do the endorsements, live your life. There's a million other areas where you can produce income.
I think this shows you, Lewis, that it's not about him. I think I truly believe it. And I know, John Jr. personally. I don't. I've always said one thing about him. I think there are things that he did in his life that he shouldn't have. I think he knows what they are. I think he was trying to live in the legacy of his father. But there's one thing I will elicit about him. And again, to the folks that don't think I ever say anything good about them, I don't have an axe to grind. I just talk about what's important and what's going on. He comes across to me as a great father. I mean that. I think he is a guy who cares about his kids. Look, is he about money? Sure. I don't know and we'll get into that down the road, of some of the things that you say happen, what he has done. But I think he wants the kid to fight because the kid wants to fight. I think this was something he just kind of, look, we know he has connections. We know he knows people. I think he probably said to the kid, let's give it a try. Floyd wants to fight you. We do it. It was marred in embarrassment the first time. And I've seen the kid. The kid has talked a lot of shit since the fight. He wanted another shot, and he's going to get his wish.
He's going to get a shot.
Yeah. And he's going to make a lot of money.
Junior is a very controlling person. So John III is doing nothing without the permission and the blessing of his father, because that's just who John is.
Really?
So, yeah. if John didn't want him in the Mayweather fight, he's not in the Mayweather fight. Okay, so
Yeah, I
this is,
definitely think he seems like a stern guy for sure.
John, his whole thing, his whole life was he wanted to be a good father. That I will say, and my feelings about Senior. Senior wasn't the father of the year. Okay, his life was the street. His life was the mafia. His life was the street. His life.
Sure.
That's how he lived his life. He loved his children. He loved his family, but he was somewhat removed from them. As funny as this may sound to you, and it's really not funny, but this is what happened. When John went to marry and when John was convicted, he first developed a relationship with John Jr. Before that, there was no relationship. And Junior missed that. Junior did everything in his power to crave his father's attention. And I think Junior looked at that and says, you know what? I don't want to raise my kids that way. I want my kids to know how I feel about them now, not when I'm in Marion or not when I'm in ADX or not when I'm doing life in Lewisburg or wherever. So, that part, and I understand where Junior's coming from with that. But
well, I will say, and I've talked about this recently with some of the behavior of his wife and daughter, right? They're under this whole little fight thing at this basketball game. And I have noticed one thing that really drove me nuts about Junior, and it definitely seems like we see this in the boxing stuff too. He always has to be center of attention. He always has to talk to the media. I've noticed after every court appearance, he's there holding court. He has to talk to every reporter.
Well, again, when Senior was around, he was never permitted to do any of that. He wasn't permitted to. He never attended his father's trials. He was not allowed. Women were not allowed. None of John's immediate family were permitted to go to the trials. John Jr. was not permitted. So it's almost like, and you listen to Angel and you listen to different people, they're sputtering to want that love that they never got from him when he was on the streets. And that's what Junior does. And that's what Angel does. And that's what they all do. Because he wasn't a loving father in terms of what they needed. He loved them, but he didn't know how to show his love because his life was the mob. His life was the street.
Sure. Do you think he probably should have never had kids? Like, to the point of
say that.
I'll say I mean it in this way. Like, you just said something very interesting, and I want to relate it to, I think it was someone in Sopranos. I think it was either Corrado or Paulie or somebody, and he said, this life and the life you want to live with a family, it just doesn't mix. Like, you can't. It's just not for.
Well,
and I've often said, like, the gambling, like sports betting that I do, I don't think it's conducive to a relationship. It's a lot of ups and downs. There are nights I have in this office where they're really good, they're really bad, and John Senior just seemed like a guy that was totally married to the life, right?
Well, he was, but as time went by, Vicky first had a house in Atlantic Beach. And, she was making barbecues and she was doing things and John was going and he liked that. And Atlantic Beach is a neighboring town to Long Beach and Lido Beach, where I had a place and Tommy Gambino had a home on Pinehurst Street. So what was happening is I was encouraging Tommy to invite John and make functions on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday in Lido Beach. And John was going to those and he was going with Vicky, his wife, and he was liking that. So the weekend started to become more family. Okay, because
so you're saying he started.
I was encouraging Tommy Gambino to do these things, and John was liking that. So it was good. John was coming over. We'd go to the beach. We'd meet Tommy, and we'd have a barbecue. His wife would come, and John was liking that. So he was starting to enjoy family that way. But as we all know, when you're a guy like him, you don't know when the next indictment's coming. You don't know what's from today till tomorrow. But I will say he started to enjoy being a dad and being a husband and being a family person. But unfortunately, like he always said, life is very, he always used to say to me, Lewis, you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring here. So let's have fun now, because tomorrow we could all be in jail.
When we
And he was
heard
right. And that was his way of thinking, Jeff,
when we heard John Senior say that, Junior tells that story about you got to make memories, you
yep.
got to, because at the end, that's all they're going to be. And, it made me think about my own dad, as you're talking there. I remember when I was a child, up until I was like 15, my dad worked a lot. He was a good dad. He gave me everything I wanted, but there was a disconnect at times. And he used to say to me, I want to live more. I got to live more. And, as we got older, we started, going to the shore, and we bought the shore house, and kind of reminded me of that a little bit. And I think you're right in the term of John Jr. wants to be always present for everything that his children do.
Yeah. And you know what? He wanted to be present at those trials. I used to go to John Sr. and say, let Junior come. We'll have whatever. Absolutely not.
Why do you think he said that?
You know what? I don't know. I mean, everybody knew who Junior was. It wasn't like they were, he was a secret. He just didn't want the family or him there. And as much as I would push him, he would push me back on it. Although John would come and we would meet at the diner across the street because he'd want to know what's going on in the trial. And I would tell Senior, I said, I met John. And a story that you don't know yet. John Gleason, the prosecutor in the last Gotti case, he served me with a subpoena that I was going to be a witness in that case. And that prohibited me from going into the courtroom during the entire Gotti trial, the last trial when Sammy flipped. And John said to Judge Glasser, I want him in the courtroom. Why can't he come into the courtroom? And there was a whole big scene. And then finally, Gleason had to withdraw the subpoena, and he had to say to Judge Glasser, we're not calling Kasman. And John flipped out in the courtroom. And I went into the courtroom for like the last 2 days of the trial. And, Judge Glasser wasn't too happy about it, but he had no choice because the government lied. They were never calling me as a witness. They just didn't want the jury to see somebody like me, some guy from Long Island, a good guy. Why why is he so close to John? Why do they have this father-son relationship? Glasser and the government didn't want the jury to see someone like me. Because remember, I offered to put the bail up for John. Government turned it down. So, it was a whole thing where, he didn't want nobody there. And that's just the way, that's just the way it was.
And we did see like friends of his, so like, or people that work for him, Jackie or whoever.
Right.
I have to ask, in terms of the cookouts, I never knew that. That's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Did he wear shorts?
No.
Never.
He only wore shorts on Wednesdays, or if we were in the Hamptons, or we were.
Have you heard?
Then he would wear shorts. But when we would go to Tommy's, he'd have a polo shirt on, a nice dress shirt, relaxed, and long pants, shoes.
So I gotta ask, so he gets in the family car and they drive to the cookout? Is that how it worked?
No. I would, somebody would pick him up and take him out there. But then I would have Tommy invite other people that John could talk to, because what was John going to sit there and who was he going to?
What kind of people were there?
Well, I would make him invite Jimmy Brown, Carmine Sciandra, other guys from that life would come and sit and sit there Mama Luke's, wouldn't say too much, but at least there was some entertainment for John, someone for him to relate to.
And you're talking about Sciandra, the top tomato guy?
Yeah, and then Tommy's wife was a Frances, excellent host, excellent hostess. So she, Tommy, wonderful barbecue. You couldn't ask for anything better.
They had to be great. A lot of good food.
Excellent. And we used to do that every summer. We did that. And and then Tommy had that beautiful apartment in the city. And Tommy, I would encourage Tommy to invite him to his pied-à-terre. So John was seeing that other way of life from a Tommy Gambino, whose father was a boss for over 20 years. And John liked that. He liked that, being with family. And because Tommy was a very good family man, his kids and his daughters. That's what Tommy Gambino was all about. And John was seeing that, and John was liking that. So unfortunately, time ran out. But I would say the last year, John became much closer to his kids.
Well, and we have to give Junior a lot of credit for being a good father. There's one thing we could say about him. We know one of his daughters is a basketball player. We know his other daughter has, kids and is very happy. His other son's in high school.
Yeah.
This
No,
one is
he raised nice kids. They're not from Howard Beach. They're not from that environment. They're in a very nice community in Long Island, and that was what he wanted to do. He knew that if he didn't do that, he'd wind up they'd wind up just
well,
like him.
we say good for him. I do want to comment for just a couple of minutes on a interesting press release by a person called Arjit Saha. He is from Essentially Sports, and I guess he had a little quick interlude interview with John III and John Jr. And this comes out yesterday. What I'm going to do, Lewis, is I'm going to put this on the screen, and I want to read a couple of bizarre quotes from Jr. There's one thing about Jr. that we'll give him his credit. He's a great father, but I think he still thinks he's in the mafia or something.
Well, John has this warped thing about, like, in his house he has Indians. He has pictures of Indian chiefs.
I've seen that, right?
He's a little bit. He goes over that inch. He used to refer to his father as the chief.
Yep.
They would go to sit downs with other families, and he was calling his father the chief.
We've heard Mikey Stars say that. Yeah.
Yeah, but with other families, his father was the boss of the Gambino family, and he would defer to his father as the chief.
Right.
Which
right.
was out of love and respect, basically.
We've heard that. Now I want to read here from the second paragraph. In a recent interview with Days in Boxing, Gotti III and his father, John Gotti Jr., reassured boxing fans that the ruckus which erupted at the first exhibition will not be repeated. They also discussed, quote, old school values still at play. According to this post, amid the father-son duo discussing the fight and the status of the security at the event, the reporter asked Gotti III, how does mom feel about it? Can she watch this stuff or no? To which Gotti III responded that his mother, quote, watches all the fights. However, there's a catch. As usual, and I'm inserting that, John Gotti Jr., his father, inserted or interjected and said, quote, they're not allowed to attend. Women aren't allowed to attend fights in our family. Further elaborating that they would gather at the home to watch it from the comfort of that house. Hearing this, the interviewer remarked, that is so old school Italian. Women aren't allowed to attend? Gotti III's father would quickly respond to the comment by saying, quote, because we're going to war. Now, he would also say that, quote, we're men. We have to take our lumps. We have to take our scars on our heads, right? We can't worry about our women in these situations. So they have to stay home. He would further disclose, and this is unbelievable, constituting that Gotti III's camp, who will be at the arena on fight night, will, quote, largely consist of, quote, soldiers or street guys.
I find that.
What exactly?
Well, that goes back to his father, you see, and it goes back to what I said to you previously, where family and women and other family members were not permitted to go to trials. Senior would not say to his wife, "Oh, come on, we're going to go to the fight tonight." That just never happened. And I think there's a big concern about security. The last fight was in Florida. You were in the United States of America, so it's a lot more safe. You're in Mexico. He can't worry about his kids acting out or somebody getting improper behavior or untoward
we can
behavior.
understand that for sure.
So he doesn't want to have that on his head. He just wants to worry about how if hell breaks loose, that he just has to worry about protecting John III. Sure. And I happen to agree with him. Kim doesn't belong at the fight. The girls don't belong at the fight. They can watch it on TV in the comfort of their homes. And that's a good move on his part, because you're in Mexico, and the crime rate is out of control there. And he's got to worry about getting himself out of there and his son out of there. About street guys being there, I don't know if that's true or not true. I highly doubt it based on, everything that's been said. But, he wants to believe that. You see, Junior lives in this fantasy world of mob. If Junior could be in the mob and never be indicted, he'd be the happiest guy in the world. Well,
that was kind of where I was going.
It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, for him.
I totally understand why you wouldn't bring your wife, your daughters to a foreign country, because as you alluded to,
especially in that venue, it doesn't make any sense.
But this is where, I find it interesting. Floyd will have his entire, everybody there.
But you got to understand, Floyd and the Gottis are from two different worlds. The two different worlds. Money
Sure.
doesn't change the world you come from. You can buy more things with money, but they're from two different worlds. Floyd's here and Junior's here, and Junior reverts back to the training of his father. See, and Junior always was a warrior. That was always his thing. Indian chiefs in the house. I'm a warrior. I'm a fighter.
Sure.
Emulating his father, because Senior was a warrior. To think about how he got to become boss, that's a fighter. That's a warrior. That's a guy that has a big pair, so to speak. So
Sure.
Junior's whole thing in life was, hey, I want to be just like my dad. I want to be like my father. And but I hope whatever the outcome of this fight is, he takes the money, he uses it, does what he has to do wisely, and let's John III have a great life, and that's the end of it, and move on from here, because you can do a lot more things without jeopardizing the safety and the security of your son at this point in time.
I will quickly ask, what are you thinking about that quote about the soldiers and street guys? What's that all about?
That's in Junior's mind. Junior was always this big thing. We have an army, we have soldiers, we have street guys. That was always his way of thinking, because that was John's way of thinking. John used to say to me all the time, Lewis, don't be a tough guy. You got an army if you need an army. And
Sure.
he's emulating in a different way his father's way.
Well, listen, we wish John III all the best in his quest number 2 against Floyd Mayweather. It's going to be quite the show. I'm going to guess we're not going to see the same hijinks we saw the first time. Before we go on this first episode of Gotti's Guy featuring Lewis Kasman, Lewis, I gotta get you to do something for me.
What's that?
We get you to rate Floyd Mayweather's new female in his life. Get a load of this chick. Nice work, huh?
Yeah.
Nice work, Floyd. Let's hope we see her at the fight this weekend.
Let's hope she's there at the fight.
I got to tell you, Floyd lives quite the life, and he should. He's an undefeated champion. Last question. On Sunday, the 25th, Lewis,
yes.
Does Floyd Mayweather have a 1 in the loss column?
No.
How does the fight go? Is it an early fight? Is it a knockout? What goes on?
No,
Floyd's not a big knockout guy.
I think it'll go midway, and that'll be the end of it.
I'll tell you this: if he
what do you
wins,
think, Jeff?
If he wins the kid, you are not.
Oh my God! If he wins, it's off to the races.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If he wins, it's off to the races.
I'll say I think the kid will do better than the first time. But
he's gonna show good. He's gonna be great.
The elevation's gonna hurt him. That's
the elevation and the hype. Just imagine getting into the ring with this guy, and and you're John Gotti III. Just picture all of that hype and all of your thought process going on. And remember, he really didn't know his grandfather. They had no. He was a kid. He was a baby. He had no relationship with Senior. So everything that he thinks about his grandfather is out of the mouth of his father. Grandpa was this, your grandfather was this, your grandfather was that. Some true and some in John Jr.'s imaginary way of what he wanted his father to be with him.
Well, very good. I appreciate this, Lewis. I want to remind everybody, we're going to be here every Thursday, noon Eastern. We're going to drop a video. This is our first kind of look. We'll see where we go next week. Something totally different, I'm sure. Make sure you join us. Again, this would be in addition to all the programming I have here on the channel. Thanks, Lewis.
Let's give a shout out, though, for John III. Go, John.
Yeah. I wish him all the best. I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and I wish him all the best.
Make your grandfather proud.
Yeah, he seems like a good kid, and I'm sure he'll do all the great things that he's accustomed to doing. So thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next week here with Lewis Kasman.